Cyberpunk Edgerunners is a new Netflix exclusive anime series that, if it succeeded at anything, it succeeded at this. It made me reinstall Cyberpunk 2077. However, I have still yet to actually turn the game back on. We'll see how long that lasts. The history of this anime series is actually a little bit crazy. I first heard about it back in 2020 when it was originally announced. This was months before the game that it's tied to, Cyberpunk 2077, was even released. The announcement landed right in the middle of hype land for that game. You know, before it fell off a cliff. Edgerunners started off by being an anomaly because it was announced in 2020 for release in 2022. That is CG Projekt Red saying, "We are so confident that Cyberpunk will be a success that we're gonna help plan and produce an anime series for 2 years after its release. Our game will totally still be amazing and relevant after that." A bold thought, perhaps. I realize now, though, that the announcement was done in a very Cyberpunk-like fashion, similar to how the game itself had that 40-minute demo reel release in 2018, only for the game not to come out for another 2.5 years after that. So announcing this anime only 2 years in advance is actually an improvement for the franchise. But perhaps that delay is what saved it. Perhaps it has been long enough for people who were so hyped by the possibilities this universe offers that we would forget the disappointment we felt when we played the launch version of the game, and perhaps instead actually enjoy this new series. Though it's not perhaps, it actually happened. I'm living proof. Today we're talking about Cyberpunk Edgerunners. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Glass Reflection would like to thank the sponsor for this video today, being the good people over at Surfshark VPN. A VPN, for those who do not know, is a way to help you protect your privacy and what you view online as you surf and watch anime and videos on the web. Not only does it secure your data, encrypting it to help stop people from eavesdropping on your connection, but it also allows you to mask your location. Doing so allows you to bypass the region locking of a variety of streaming services, as not all streaming services are equal in what regions that they service. So having a VPN like Surfshark can help you access shows that you might not be able to otherwise. Content blocked on services such as Netflix and YouTube can be accessible simply by connecting to a local server from the country that you would like to access. And of course, Surfshark is available on a variety of devices as well as your PC, so you can stream your anime on the go if you so choose. There will be a link and a promo code in the description where you can sign up for a percentage off as well as an extra 3 months free because we like you guys so much. And best of all, if you try it out and you don't find that it helps, it's not doing what you expected, or it doesn't end up unblocking the content that you want it to, Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked. So thank you very much to Surfshark for sponsoring. And now, back to the video. My history with Cyberpunk as a franchise is a bit weird in that it's always been a side thing that I've been interested in without diving into the source itself. Cyberpunk started out as a tabletop RPG developed by Mike Pondsmith in the 80s and running multiple versions up to and including Cyberpunk Red, released in 2020. Not to be confused with Cyberpunk 2020, that did not come out in actual 2020. I've never actually run or been run through a tabletop game of Cyberpunk, though I have read through the vast majority of modules that Cyberpunk 2020 has on offer while daydreaming about how great playing those modules would actually be within the comfort of my own imagination. Because as any game master will tell you, sometimes those games can be far more exciting than the real thing, depending on circumstances and your lack of friends. But I have always loved the world and the setting of the Cyberpunk universe, which of course made me very easy prey for the hype machine that was Cyberpunk 2077. Not only was I already interested in this world and this setting, but to see it portrayed in such a modern and high-tech way blew my mind back in 2018 with the aforementioned demo. This was a world I wanted to experience. This was a world I wanted to live in. And then I played. Yeah, those feelings didn't last. So I was skeptical, of course, going into Edgerunners. I didn't know much about the story of this anime other than the fact that it was standalone and it took place before the game did. But I did know that it existed within the same world and had all of the same bits and pieces that originally got me into this universe in the first place, but without, you know, the gameplay that ultimately killed my hype. And it was an anime, which for me is a massive selling point, as you might imagine. Edgerunners, in short, is a damn good anime. While I would hesitate to immediately place it in like a ranked list next to the likes of Akira, Psychopaths, Ergo Proxy, and Ghost in the Shell, because I think it's still a little bit too new for me to get a fully solid feeling on that. It'll depend on how that stands up over time. I can say, however, that it is head and shoulders over a large chunk of its fellow anime in the genre. It's not higher than, say, Gets 95, but it does beat the hell out of the last time Netflix was associated with a cyberpunk-themed anime. At its core, Edgerunners provides us with a fairly common story about an underdog character frustrated with his current circumstances that, through happenstance, comes across an opportunity to massively change both themselves and the world around them. David Martinez is a young man currently attending a preppy corpo school for punchable characters who have the attitude of, "My father will hear about this," at any negative interaction. David, however, does not fit the corpo lifestyle, not having come from that background, and can easily be described as a delinquent within that culture, only attending as his mother worked very hard constantly for several years to give her child this opportunity. Because while corpo schools are not known for their morals, those who succeed within their walls are usually financially well off, even if they are morally bankrupt because of it. If you didn't know that about this world, thankfully, this story very clearly shows you. +1 for the show there. Not having to know about the setting or playing the game that's attached to it is very important, and I applaud it for being separate. David and his mother end up in a car accident where she unfortunately dies of fatal injuries. However, in the process, David learns that part of what his mom did to afford his scholarship was to smuggle cyber implants from the recently deceased to those people who are not necessarily favored by both the law and its corporate overlords. He then takes it upon himself to bring the most recent implant that she had been ferrying to a local Ripper dock and install it in himself. This implant is a top-of-the-line combat OS that essentially grants the user the ability to use bullet time. However, its former user went insane from the physical pressure of doing such a thing. Oh, that's not foreshadowing. David, however, being our protagonist, is, in his own words, built different. And he can seemingly use this implant multiple times per day with little consequences. He then gets involved with a group of Edgerunners, or simply Cyberpunks, if you're listening to the Japanese subbed version. That was a little weird. He does a bunch of jobs stealing, shooting up places, basically being a part of an extremely high-tech gang in a city with a bunch of other extremely high-tech gangs, except that our lead character can essentially stop time for himself and screw with people. And the narrative showcases this new life of his with both its ups and downs. I could spend a decently long time going over all of the things that narratively Edgerunners does that exists in other narratives. I think I'd actually have a harder time trying to find things that are unique to this story specifically, but I've also read a crap ton of novels in the genre, and as the saying goes, originality is not how new your writing is, it's how obscure your references are. If you reference some sci-fi book from the 70s that no one in your audience has read, it's very easy to pass that off as an original idea. There's a writing hot tip for you. That said, though, Edgerunners' greatest strength, and one of the reasons why I think it'll last a reasonably long time in public consciousness and hopefully exist in the genre outside of, just helping to promote the game that it is attached to, is that it takes these narrative ideas, these themes, and these tropes, and it tweaks them and it implements them with one another better than most other shows, both within the genre and outside of it. Our main character is defined by the implant that he gets. Without that implant, he would not have been able to have this story happen in his life. But not only that, because he is the chosen one of this narrative, his body is unique in that it can handle what this implant dishes out where others cannot. But what I love about this is that his body does indeed have a limit. It's just far higher than a normal person. He is not given plot invulnerability from what this implant can do to him. He's just delaying the inevitable. And that alone, right there, changes how we perceive David as he acts during these action scenes. We can feel a lot more tension every time he activates the implant because we know that the series will eventually smack him with the limit. It is a ticking time bomb, and we just don't know when it is going to go boom. They could have just made him completely immune. They could pull an Iron Man where the only thing that could stop his superpowered implant is another runner with an identical implant, like Atom Smasher. Or, if they didn't give two shits about separating this narrative from the game's narrative, they could have had David get zeroed by V. or something, but they didn't. Not only do they respect David as a character and not give him some fake god mode, but they respected the audience by not making us have to deal with such a suspension of disbelief that the main character, for some reason, does not follow the same rules as everyone else. A delay in consequences for using experimental tech is fine. That happens in biology all the time. People have different tolerances for things. I can get behind that, but full immunity of consequences would have just been boring. I'm glad that doesn't happen here. And really, that's a lot of things that happen with this series. For example, a lot of discussion already exists about the best character of the show, Rebecca. Mostly because, hey, Trigger added a lolly character. Apparently, the story goes, CD Projekt Red did not want a lolly character in their new anime series, and Studio Trigger said, well, suck it up, the lolly must stay, so Rebecca exists. But I love that Trigger did that, not because Rebecca is a lolly specifically, but because her being a lolly goes against the character mold of the entire setting, and I am here for it. CDPR's original comment against her was that lollies don't exist in Night City, and she would be out of place. What? Cyberpunk is all about a universe where you can essentially change whatever you want about yourself. If you have the eddies, you can replace whatever the hell you want with your body, with new cybernetic versions of it. You don't like your arm? Go get a new one with a gun attached, or blades. You don't like your face? No problem. Here's a completely new cybernetic body if you want. There is a confirmed in-universe scenario from Pond Smith himself that has the massive, hulking, full cyborg Atom Smasher downloading himself into a second body that looks like Elvis Presley to spend a night with one of the Arasaka daughters. Like, you can do what you want, but now we have to conform to the stereotype. And you know, while I get that the game itself, has massive limitations on what you can do with your character because there are limits as to what the developers can code, there's only so much time, that's fine, I get that. But I really dislike the idea that the universe as a whole, you know, this universe where you can change and become whatever you want, that everyone is still following some kind of boring guide as to what is allowed and what isn't. These body types are allowed, these body types are not. Clothes? Hope you're a fan of neon, because that's the style around here. You know, for a universe about characters who choose not to conform to the system or the rules laid down by the corporations, there's a lot of actual conforming happening all over the place. Did you know, for example, there are furries in the Cyberpunk universe? Oh yeah, they're called exotics. Yeah, you have to be hella rich to afford those body modifications, but they exist. Couldn't tell that by playing the game or watching this anime though. That wouldn't be fitting with the stereotypical cyberpunk aesthetic. Nearly everyone in the game and even this show all fit the mold of what a normal person would recognize as. Like everyone in the game is at some kind of themed cosplay contest. But it doesn't have to be that way. And I love that Rebecca breaks the mold just enough to show that it can be broken, even if it never goes further than that. Rebecca is such a good character on her own as well, though. She is a ride or die partner to David throughout, and even though she is the Rem to David's Subaru, because, you know, he's infatuated with another girl, she sticks with him to the end. And that's probably the last great thing that I wanted to quickly mention about the show, that it gets right. To the point where I don't want to actually elaborate too much, in case you, my gentle viewer, has decided to make it this far into the video without watching the series yourself. What is wrong with you? Just the concept of ride or die in this series is so well told. In any story, it is really hard to, you know, sell a relationship between characters that are truly ride or die, especially when they don't have any preamble that exists before the show, like, you know, brothers or something. To, in such a short amount of time, show that characters have that much respect or love for one another that they will seriously ride into hell for the other. Like, that takes a lot of buildup to do properly. You need to overcome the reasons of like, well, why wouldn't they just bail at the first opportunity? Why isn't self-preservation a thing for them? Especially in a world like Cyberpunk where most people, heck, the entire corpo culture is just everyone for themselves. Everyone is loyal until they're not. So being able to showcase that level of trust and respect between characters in the small amount of time that they had for the show, it's brilliant. It's one of the reasons why I said Rebecca is like the best character in the show, because she is. And Rebecca isn't the only one with that ride or die mentality either. Falco is another. Which is interesting because, like, in the English dub, he's voiced by Matthew Mercer. And, like, if I had $1 for every time Matthew Mercer voiced a Southern-speaking cowboy with a cybernetic arm, well, I'd have $2, but it's weird that it happened twice. But at the end of the day, will this anime get me to play Cyberpunk again? I mean, it already made me install it, so that's the first step. But what reason would I have to play it again? I already defeated the game back in its broken state, you know, when it launched. And yes, it may be a lot more playable now, 2 years later with updates, but what reason would I have to play it? Well, I can think of one reason. Ride or die, motherfucker. Hey, thank you for watching this video all the way to the end, and a very, very special thank you to my patrons who make these types of videos possible and give me the ability to feed myself. If you are a patron and you're watching this video and you've made it this far, thank you very much. If you're not a patron, there will be a link down in the description so you can check out our Patreon and decide whether or not you want to help out. It's up to you. And if you help out just that little bit more, you get to be like these following people. Those being Omar Showman, Hector Montemayor, Wago221, City Yamako, Ryfen Bonaparte, and Ross Emerson for being even more supremely awesome. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen and others, watch more anime and stay frosty.